It's finding who likes what you have and building those people, having those people show it to other people. Kind of like an underground band would do, traveling around in a van. I mean, that's kind of where we're at right now. But the van is Facebook and Instagram, you know?
Yeah. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of I Know This Guy, the podcast where we dive deep into the lives of some of the most interesting people I know. Before we get started, please like and subscribe to I Know This Guy wherever you get your podcasts. By the way, my kids want me to say something about ringing a bell. What the hell's a bell?
So I see Michael Peterson sent over someone really awesome for us to talk to.
Oh yeah, this is great. So we're going to be talking to Frankie Moreno today, just about his life and his career. Did you know that he turned out 30 number one hits this year?
A lot more than I did.
Me too.
I mean, how many hits have you put out, Dad?
I don't know, just one or two, not 30.
Yeah. I mean, you can't count Singing in the Shower a hit, though.
I have pumped out many a hit singing in the shower.
Okay, right, whatever. I've heard you.
Yeah.
I mean, they hurt. They hit in that they hurt.
Oh, but, funny.
Yeah. Exactly.
Now, this will be really good because I'm really interested to hear about his process. How how he's able to put out so many hits after. I think he's got the he's number 3 in hits in all time.
Madonna.
Yeah, just behind Madonna. So This is going to be a really cool interview.
Yeah, can't wait to see this. I feel like I don't even know what to expect with this one.
Yeah, don't tell him anything about Singing in the Shower.
No, it's too late. That came up in the email thread. All right, let's get into the interview.
All right, Frankie, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So your buddy, Michael Peterson, you as a referral, he said you're the most interesting guy he knows. So I can't wait. Yes, I can't wait to dig into this story. Now, you can't back out either, right?
I give you whatever you want.
All right, fantastic. So let's start with your backstory. So what makes Frankie Frankie?
Well, I come from a family of kind of musicians, like, what do you call them? Weekend warriors. A lot of people that played a little bit here, a little bit there, but never made it necessarily a career. But music was always in my house, you know? And I mean, my very earliest memories are just music. We had musical instruments all over the house. My dad played guitar. Mm-hmm. I'm a piano player. I mean, I play guitar too, but I'm a piano player. But there was nobody in my family that played piano. So we had guitars all over, as I still do, as you can see in my house here.
Just one or two.
Yeah. Just my dad had guitars all over the place, and we had a drum set and bass, just like it was like the toys of the house, right? And it was never a thing of like, hey, you need to learn how to play this, or hey, you should play this. It was always just that interesting thing sitting back there that made noise that attracted people to listen. So it was always like a baseball bat or a basketball for me, or a kite, you know? And it would be the treat if I could play it. Like if I ate all my dinner, I can go mess with the guitar, kind of a thing. And it made me fall in love with the instruments like crazy, trying to make it sound like I heard on the record. Oh, the guitar, this is the guitar kind of sound that was on that record. How do I make it sound like that? How do I play that sound? And just fell in love with it that way. And that's how it all began for me.
So did it come easy?
Yeah, it did. It was, well, no, guitar did not. Guitar is what was all over the place. And it was very difficult for my little fingers to play. It hurt my hands, you know. But we had this old broken down piano that my grandmother gave me in the garage. And one day my older brother Michael came home. I have 4 brothers. 2 older, 2 younger. He came home and he knew how to play Star Wars on the piano. Dun, 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 right? with one finger. And I heard that, and then he showed it to me, and I was about, I mean, they tell me 2 or 3 years old, but who knows, you know. And I played it, and I was able to copy it. And all I did for the next hours and hours was play that and tried. Now I had just started adding in my left hand, which he didn't know how to do, just to make chords, just making it sound bigger. And my parents came over, and they're like, what the heck is this? Hey, listen to this, try this. Here's chopsticks. And I could just play it like no issue, you know?
Wow.
So they took it to another level. Here, listen to this recording, try playing this. And I could play it. I mean, all the way to Mozart sonatas. I could hear a Mozart sonata, a 30-minute piano concerto of Mozart, and hear it and almost copy it verbatim, you know, backwards, forwards, from the end to the beginning, to the beginning to the end, like just kind of freakish, really. So they saw that, and they're like, we could sell this.
Oh, Hayden, you got to come in on this. I bet you wish. I bet you wish you could say that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I had a very different relationship with music growing up. I feel like, I mean, I had the same thing where like it was always around us.
Yeah.
Growing up, but I kind of brute force my way through like learning tab, and then learn to read music, and then learn like ear training and all that. And like,
that's the standard way, you know, that's how you're supposed to do it.
For sure.
Not the freakish way.
Yeah.
No,
I mean, like what he's saying right there. I mean, what you're saying is how it's supposed to be done. I mean, so I guess that's what made my situation kind of interesting, is because I just understood it, and I had no idea why. And honestly, I was 3 or 4 years old, right? So I have no idea why. So then once I figured out that piano, you know, the do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, over and over and over. That's all a piano is. It's not like 88 different notes. It's the same 8 notes over and over, right? 12 notes, whatever. And once I figured out that in my head, the way the notes went together and why this sounded good, like I quickly learned this doesn't sound good with this note. This note doesn't work with this note. I guess it'd be like, the only thing I compare it to is cooking, right? If you don't have a cooking instructor, you quickly learn don't put garlic with strawberries, or, you know, right? It's like you just learn what works together. Oh, garlic and onions, that really works well. Why? Because this flavor tastes like this, and this flavor tastes like this, and this together, and you add this equals this, which they call music theory. But I just kind of figured it out. And, you know, like you see those little kids on Ellen DeGeneres that play classical music at 3 years old. That's what I was. And I have no idea why, and neither did my family. And, you know, they started giving me the guitar tab and stuff like that. And that honestly tripped my head out, trying to do what you just said, Hayden. Like I couldn't understand that, like looking at something and what is this? It made no sense. I just had to kind of trial and error it, I guess you would say.
Yeah. I mean, I find that even like teach music now as well. And since then now I play everything by ear whenever possible. And like, I've learned to go back and kind of counterbalance my initial upbringing. But like, it's funny coming across students where, like they're in your situation where I could just play a little riff on the piano and they'll pick it up like that. But having them sit down and read through any piece, it's just counterintuitive, and like it makes it feel heavier or more like work that way. Where I feel like maybe by ear you're like tapping into more of like a playful type of thing. It's just your imagination.
Right. Yeah, totally. That's exactly right. And you know, honestly, for me, like, you know, when I hit about 7 years old, I started taking lessons. And my parents, I made a joke earlier saying, you know, oh, we can make money off this. My parents were never like that. They thought this was something that was in my heart, and I loved it, and they would support it. If I didn't want to do it, my parents would always say, hey, we'll pay for all the lessons you want, as many as you want. If you don't want to do it, if you're not going to practice and you don't want to do it, just tell us and we'll stop paying, you know? They were never like, do your lessons. I never had that in my house. I never had practice your piano, and never once. It was just, hey, if you don't, we're going to stop paying for lessons. And I wanted lessons because I saw with my father, who was a great guitar player, I saw he had a lot of walls with his playing. Does that make sense? Like he had a lot of roadblocks because he didn't learn the stuff you're talking about with teaching. Like if you teach someone to listen by ear, eventually there's roadblocks. You know, when you put a piece of sheet music in front of somebody, they might go like, I don't know what this is, because they never learned that. Or, you know, hey, make that chord augmented, or, you know, minor. If you don't understand that, then you're going to hit these roadblocks. So my dad had a lot of that. He learned how to play by ear by listening to Chuck Berry records and all that rock and roll stuff. And so when it came time, like, hey, try this jazz thing, it made no sense to him. And I saw that as a young kid, right? And I'm like, I don't want to have anything blocking me from this, because this is the coolest thing in the world. Listening to music and being able to play it, I could instantly see, you know, when I hit 5, 6, 7 years old, I could instantly see it attracts friends, it attracts people's attention, and not like, oh, you know, I want attention, because that's not at all what it was about. It was about me doing something cool and people going, wow, that's cool, let's join in. And it created this little community. And I saw that and I go, okay, well, man, I would come to this thing where, wow, I'd hear a Harry Connick Jr. record, right? And he's playing this jazz stuff. I'm going, what is that weird chord he's doing? Mozart didn't do that. Jerry Lee Lewis didn't do that. And I'd try to figure it out. And sometimes it was hard. And I go like, God, I'm having a roadblock here. I need lessons to teach me what that is that he's doing. So I wanted lessons. And at 7 years old to about 15 or 16, I took 3 lessons a week from 3 different teachers. One was classical and reading, sight reading. One was like jazz, you know, and just that kind of stuff. And one was pure improv, a guy who just taught me how to fix a mistake. If I hit a wrong note, that is now part of the song, and to incorporate that. And that was actually my favorite class, because it was taking, like, you know, dun, 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 clink. Well, that clink becomes clink, 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 clink. You know, you turn it into a solo, right? And people go, wow, that was interesting, but it's really just a mistake.
You never admit it, though.
Right. Well, and then that opened my ears to, like, what is a mistake? I mean, there is no mistake. There's no such thing as a mistake if you know how to incorporate it. It's art. What might sound really strange to you, Hayden, might sound really cool to you, Norm. I mean, it's, you know, it's interesting. It's who's better, Picasso or Michelangelo? Both pretty famous, right?
Right.
Completely different. It depends on who you're talking to.
Yeah, and I feel like if you know, like, the structure of music, like, and like you said, the function of everything, like how the notes relate to each other, you can justify like any note over any chord, or you can justify any cluster of notes that you might hit by accident
on any instrument.
Yeah.
On any instrument. Because once I learned the piano, then when I had the guitar, and you got this E, A, D, G, B, E, right? This weird, why is it set up like this? Well, I know if I want to make a G chord, I don't know the guitar, but I know E is not part of the G chord. So how do I turn that into part of a G chord? G, you know, and then A needs to go to a B. You just start learning it. And I didn't even need anybody to show me that, because the theory made sense. So, you know, not to, like, for people who are watching who want to learn how to play music, I'm not the example of how to learn, because I was one of those weird exception to the rules. But in general, that's the concept. If you learn music, forget you want to play guitar, saxophone, drums. Well, drums is a little different out there, but like piano, anything that's a musical instrument with notation, if you understand the theory of music, and most, you know, young upcoming musicians don't want to learn that. That's the boring part, right? Learning theory. If you just learn why things work together, how you make a chord, you just translate to any instrument you want. And once you know, on a saxophone, if you know, okay, I got to blow a certain way, you learn how to blow that certain way. Then here's with the weird fingering. Don't compare it to a piano or guitar. Just know what it is and know, well, I'm going to hit a G scale. Like, this is how I form that, right? It starts becoming very simple in the end of the day if you have the basic training of it.
You know, I remember growing up, and the kids on the block, we'd always play after school. And there was a group of kids that always had to go in for piano. So usually where I grew up, 6 o'clock was the time you were eating. So 5 or 5:30 when these kids, you could hear their moms across the neighborhood. It's time to play the piano. It's time for your lessons. These kids would sulk and go back home. And they It was just torture to go there.
It was homework.
It was homework. Yeah.
Yeah. It took a paintbrush and turned it into a number 2 pencil. It took the idea of this cool, I mean, like, think of the artists you like. I mean, we all listen to our own things, and I mean, I like everything, honestly. I don't think there's really any style of music I don't like. If it's performed well and written well, I love it. But the idea of it, you listen to somebody and you want to translate that to your own thing. When it becomes, it's not the hard part that's boring, and there's all obviously hurdles to get through, but it's when it becomes a forced thing, a deadline. Learn this by your next lesson's Tuesday at 2:00, and you need to know this by then. It just makes it, you don't want to. And right. I guarantee you, all those kids that complain about doing that probably aren't playing the piano anymore.
You're absolutely right.
I mean, so there's a fine line with that. And I used to teach a little bit myself, as I got older, but I'm a terrible teacher because I have no patience. and I knew that. I learned that real quick. Like, I would start feeling the frustration and going like, oh no, I'm the wrong thing for this child to learn how to play music, or this kid to learn to play music, because I'm seeing it from a whole different perspective, and I have to understand their perspective. And I couldn't get into that world because I never grew up going through the steps. Right. So I'm not the right one to teach. I guess in that sense.
So I guess probably the most important comment I have right now, it looks like your dog is as spoiled as ours.
Well, this dog, that one back there?
That one right back there. Yep. Are you kidding me? Is that oh my gosh.
But I'll tell you what, so that's my buddy, that's my dog Louie, who just passed away.
Oh no.
So I had a life-size pillow made of him.
Oh.
Because I have another dog that's an English bulldog, that's a black and white English bulldog named Stanzi, that comes and lays with that pillow now. But they're spoiled. They go on the airplanes with me. They're backstage at every one of my shows.
Oh, that's great. I've got my own British bulldog right here.
I love it. I love it.
I can't believe it. I thought for sure that was, we have a golden retriever and he's taken over the house, but that was funny. I was looking, I was going, you've got the red couch behind you. I've got it in the other room where he sits directly behind me on the red couch, and he sleeps in our bed now.
Well, I mean, my dog used to sit there all the time like that. So I'm like, well, how do I memorialize that?
That is really cool. That's cool.
I mean, just during this COVID times, I had to put down a Great Dane and an English bulldog that just tore me to pieces, because they're, dogs are the best thing in the world. Maybe better than music.
Yeah. Maybe. Did the Great Dane go with you? He stayed at home, right? You didn't bring him anywhere.
No, the Great Dane did not go anywhere. The Great Dane was 175.
Oh yeah, I was going to say, try to get a seat for him.
Yeah, no. But my little, I have a mini English. Her name is Stanzi, which is Mozart's wife's name, and she just sits on my lap on airplanes. And
that's cool.
It's a whole thing. It's a whole thing.
Yeah. Well, they can certainly pick you up, and especially during this time, I just the dog makes the difference. Oh
yeah, if you're home alone right now and there's not an animal in your house, it's definitely a different vibe for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So where did you grow up?
Santa Cruz, California. And I think that's a big part of why I do what I do. I grew up in Santa Cruz. It's a little Bay Area town in California, in between Monterey and San Francisco. Super artsy town. It's all about surfing, and very liberal town. Everyone's crazy, totally crazy. But, there was a lot of traits I picked up from out there and a lot of traits I did not. But the main thing that was awesome about Santa Cruz was there was very few places to play music. I mean, little clubs, nothing significant. It's not like Las Vegas or New York or San Francisco. I mean, it was little small venues, right? But they did not want you playing cover songs. You can't go in there and just play someone else's song. They did not want dance bands playing Mustang Sally, Mm-hmm. They come in and show us your art, show us your work. That's how I grew up. I grew up never playing cover songs, just because, once in a blue moon, but It was about, you have to write your own. If I'm going to play music, now I learned the art of music. Now I have to create my music.
Right.
That was awesome. I'm so glad now. At the time it was like, I got to get out of Santa Cruz. It's so small. And I moved to Nashville. At that time, who knew that would be such a giant impact on the rest of my life? Writing music and creating my own music, where, I hear a song by Frank Sinatra or Elvis Presley or whoever, right? Green Day, whoever it may be. If I play it, it doesn't sound like Green Day. I can learn the parts on the instrument, but it never really sounds like them because that's their thing. They wrote that song to fit that artist, right? And it never worked for me. And I learned that really fast as a child. Just, okay, what sounds good for me? I have to tell my own stories. I have to tell things I've gone through. And obviously, as I grew older and experienced life more, the music got a little bit better because I actually had something to say. But, this stuff from when I was 10, 12 years old, I was writing music then. If I look back at that stuff, it's fun to listen to, but it was nothing that's going to make any gold records,
When did you head out to Nashville?
So I lived in California in Santa Cruz. I was playing all over the West Coast and really doing really well in the scene, and started getting calls to come out to Nashville, come out here and write songs. And I'm like, I'd love to do that. That sounds like my dream come true. And now you got to remember at this time, I went to Nashville, I think 95. At this time, country music was bigger than pop is now. I mean, Garth Brooks was what Bruno Mars is now, right? Like, It was the focal point of the music industry. Now it's back to pop again, and country's in there, and blues and rock, but it's all about who's the top pop. But at that time, country was the leading drive force in record sales and everything. So I was brought up by my dad and all that stuff listening to old rock and roll. So I loved classical music and old rock and roll music, like Chuck Berry and Ray Charles and Stevie Wonder and all that stuff, right? So there was no market for writing 50s and 60s songs. I can't write a new 50s and 60s song. So country music was the closest thing for me. So when I was 18, I moved to Nashville, kind of cold, went out there from being this big fish in the little pond syndrome to no one knows who I am. And I lived in Nashville, and that was a giant schooling for me. That was me being the dumbass in college getting bullied, right? Where I really learned what I needed to do with my music out there. That was the pivotal point for me.
So it was no holds bar, right?
Yeah, I mean, I instantly started working because I was a piano player. So I was working with bands right out of the gates. I became one of the first call session players at this time. I was 20. Well, I mean, I moved out there when I was right out of high school, but by the time I was about 22 years old, if you needed piano on your session, you either called Pig Robbins to come out and do it, was the expensive guy, or if he was unavailable, you call me and I can play the piano. I mean, there was a lot of great piano players, but I mean, I was doing 2 sessions a day. But as far as doing my own music, that was the hard part, because every producer would see me and go, "Oh, you're an Italian guy from the West Coast who plays piano. We don't have that out here." And so my goal was like, "I'm going to show you." And they're like, "Well, God, you're playing, we come to your little showcase you did for us, and you're playing rock and roll stuff, and then you do a country song, then you do a ballad, and then what are you?" I'm like, I'm music. Like, I play good music. There's good music and bad music. There's no, what's all these categorizations we have to have? Like, no, you got to fit into a box. So that was a struggle, trying to learn to fit into the box. And the end of the day scenario was learning not fitting into the box was my key to success, which, again, I wouldn't tell up and coming singers. You have to pick a style, But that was my style. I was just very well trained on all the different styles, and I loved them all equally. That I just created my own little. I wanted to have my own technique of doing things, and they certainly didn't think that was the answer out there. So I had to do it on my own,
Yeah, that's tough uphill battle when you have to do that, right? Conform.
Yeah, and I mean that's if you want to like here's this country industry, and you're in Nashville, Tennessee, who's leading in the recording world of the country music, and here comes this guy, and they go, yeah, I remember sitting down with some of the top guys in town, without saying names, some guys who were the top producers in town who were piano players. There was a guy named Tony Brown who ran MCA Records, which was the biggest thing when I moved out there, and he used to play piano for Elvis Presley, and then became this big producer. And I had a great meeting with Tony Brown. He said, man, I'd love to do something with you, but piano is not what's selling right now. And all I could think about was like, but isn't that the reason it would sell? If someone told Elvis, rock and roll music is not what's happening right now, you got to sing country western, would we have rock and roll? Or if someone told the Beatles, no, man, this weird way of writing is not what's happening, you got to write bubblegum music, would we have had the Beatles? None of us would have touched a guitar if it wasn't for people going against the system,
Right. It's interesting. I'm not sure if you were at the house at the time, Hayde, but I watched this documentary about Brian Wilson and how he put together, it was Pet Zoo for the Beach Boys. Pet Sounds. And famous album, the label hated it. No, not at all. And yet the Beatles said that like their next step, Sgt. Pepper and all, it was all based off of that new sound. And yeah.
Brian Wilson, he was the whole brains of the Beach Boys. He heard Rubber Soul by the Beatles, and he thought that was some groundbreaking thing. So he wanted to beat that, and that's how he wrote Pet Sounds. So then the Beatles heard that, and that's how they made Sgt. Pepper. And it's interesting because the whole Beach Boy platform at the beginning was him. He loved Chuck Berry, and he loved the Four Freshmen, and he made Chuck Berry music with Four Freshmen harmonies. Nothing new, but not ever combined in that way.
Yeah.
It's like the first person to put basil in your tomato sauce, right? It's like, ooh, that makes it better.
That's something different.
And we all that record was not a commercial success nor liked by many people. It was, I don't remember, it didn't chart very high. It was definitely not in the top 10. And now it's in the Smithsonian for one of the most important records of our generation.
I've even heard it referred to as the most important.
And it's funny, like thinking of that, like going back to what I was saying earlier, like, I loved all the Mozart stuff, and I listened to all that Mozart stuff. If you're a music history buff, or if you care enough to follow anything about that, a guy like Mozart was never really famous when he was alive. He was a popular, great player. That's it. Like the guy down the street who's a great player. It wasn't until over 100 years after he died, some guy made a statue of him to put in Vienna, and they started researching his music and going, wow, this guy had a lot of content. It was more about his content than his actual work, right? He had more content than anyone. He wrote, operas and all these different things, all kinds of things, which we call classical music now. But at that time, it was pop music, right? It was popular music.
Mm-hmm.
And he's writing waltzes and operas and preludes and concertos and symphonies, all different things, which we just lump into the word classical, which is funny because we'll take the word country now, and we got a bluegrass and country rock and country hip hop. We'll take a genre now and divide it into a billion things, but we'll lump the word classical of hundreds of years apart into just one word, and I think that scares people off. If you listen to anything, Beach Boys, Pet Sounds, Beatles, classical music is what opened that door. And a lot of people are, and that's why I think like it's important to know a little bit about classical music when you're learning music, because you'll learn that everything you're going to play has already been played. It's already been created. All you got to do is learn it and find your own way of showcasing it, right? And I think that's with like the Beach Boys and all those things. It is interesting to read. Like I've always loved reading. If I like an artist, if I like the Beach Boys, I want to know who did he listen to, right? And then is Chuck Berry and Four Freshmen? Okay, let me get into their stuff. And I do this regularly. Like every week I got this new artist I'm trying to like trace back to Beethoven and Bach and all those guys, right? If you listen to who did the Four Freshmen and who did Chuck Berry listen to, it just keeps going back and going back. I mean, it all starts at one place. And that's crazy when you start listening to stuff like, you know, when you get a chance, just download a Bach fugue. It blows your mind. I mean, you go like, oh my God. I mean, well, no one can ever do that again. And no one has. We just borrow little samples of that and turn that into modern music, you know? The simplicity of it too, because now we have very quick lives. I mean, hey, who was the fourth president? Siri, who was the fourth president? Boom, got the answer. You don't retain it. It just move on. A song has to be 3.5 minutes. Why is a song 3.5 minutes? Because that's what fit on a vinyl, you know? And why did we put 10 songs on a CD? Because you get X amount of minutes per vinyl album now. Then the CD comes out and holds 80 minutes, but we still put 10 songs. We held on to something like a traditional thing. So why do we still need 10 3.5-minute songs if we can hold 80 minutes? Makes no sense. But we just held on to that thing. And now we're in the age of, you know, downloading singles and people just streaming stuff, which I'm kind of anti.
Right.
People just listening to music for free. So an artist will work his whole, learn, you know, how many hundreds of thousands of dollars are spent on lessons for kids and how many hours put into learning. And then you create this piece of art and you go, here, take it for free. And I can't pay my bills, you know?
Yeah.
So I only release my stuff on iTunes now. And then later, once it's out, then we'll put it up on all the free streaming, Spotify's and all that stuff. But I just, you know, we've killed our own industry by people just dumbing things down so much and just saying, here, I'll give it to you for free. And what that does is you want to listen. Well, you probably listen to it on your speakerphone. You probably go like, oh, that sounds cool. And you listen to the chorus. Cool. And that's where it ends. No one sits down now and, you know, they say, oh, records sound better. I don't know if a vinyl record sounds better, but it's definitely a better experience because you have to be in front of the machine. You have to turn it over. You leave the room, it sounds different, right? You commit to it and you're listening to it. And maybe you grab a glass of wine or something. You're listening to this piece of art that was created. Now it's in the car while you're texting and driving and have a coffee in between your legs. So it's
and calling somebody.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Well, you know, listening to you, I was thinking about listening habits. So before you would listen and maybe the industry had us programmed to where it was 2.5, 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes. But now with all this rapid fire and this huge, just diversity of music, composition, has that changed at all? Or like, do you have to write for that really quick, rapid? Do you?
I'm always at war with myself on what I believe it should be and what it needs to be, right? And there's always that thing of like, well, I'm going to make it what I want because it's for me. But then I go, well, if I'm going to try to sell this, then it's about what you want. I don't open a restaurant and say, hey, you're going to have anchovy pizza and that's it, buddy. If you say, I hate anchovies, get out of my restaurant. That's not how you run a restaurant. If you're going to sell it and commercialize it, you have to give them what they want. And that's a tough thing because giving people what they want is sometimes understanding they want it fast, they want it quick, get to the hook, be done, you know? How do you write? How do you compose in the sense, because I'm a classical music lover and I'm an old rock and roll music lover. Those are completely different. Old rock and roll was like 2-minute songs, right? Classic, old school 50s, 60s stuff, 1:40 to 2:15, otherwise you don't get on the radio. But now, and classical is 45 minutes a song because there wasn't a radio. So we contorted everything. Here comes Thomas Edison. We're playing music. There's Mozart, and he's going. The only way you can hear Mozart is to see Mozart. That's it. You can't buy his record or see him on TV. It didn't exist, right? In the 1700s. So Mozart leads, he's writing for kings and stuff like for instance, the quick history of it is Bach is writing for churches. He writes all his music for the church. That was the whole point of music, to write for God or whoever your God was. And whatever genre of music or whoever you believed in as was God, the music was for God. In the Mozart era that came out following that, Mozart and Haydn and all those classical composers, it was about writing for kings and queens, right? Aristocrats. People pay you to write. The church used to pay you. Now the kings and queens pay you. In the Beethoven era, he's the first guy to start going like, screw the system. I'm going to just put on shows at my house and charge people to come into my house. He pretended he was a prince of Persia, and everyone thought he was this famous guy. Come to find out later, he's amazing. They go, oh, wow, he's not a prince, but he's great. We'll come and we'll buy a ticket to his house. They'd come and watch him at his house. Well, that sparked off the whole parlor situation of the Chopins, which turned into reggae, or not reggae, ragtime. And people start playing in these little parlors. So it's not a castle. It's not a church. It's not their home. They make these little parlors, which have morphed into what we call now clubs or lounges, right? And that morphed a whole thing. During this process, Thomas Edison devises a machine to record music. And once we were able to record music, which is amazing, because now I can hear Chuck Berry or Elvis Presley, and I never met him. Right? I can hear him, and I could be in 1956 in this time capsule and hear his voice, and it's forever exactly the same. He's not going to grow as the more I listen to that song. It's from 1956, whatever he was going on in his life. That's amazing. That's a cool piece of history, right? You listen to that now, but what that did, the problem that the record did was it started, now we can sell this to you. Once we can sell it, we compartmentalize it and we categorize it. Classical, country, blues, whatever. And there was only a few things. But once we put these tags on it, that changed everything. There never used to be a tag on the music. There never used to be, well, he writes Turkish waltzes. Well, he writes symphonies. It's all classical. I mean, it was just pop music. It's music. That changed everything to allow us to get into this field of what classified. And then they go, oh, well, this music is selling the most. So we'll call that the popular music, pop, right? And we're going to start radio stations playing these songs, and we're going to play the pop songs. And if we're going to do that, they need to fit a certain format, because the only way we're going to get paid is to have commercials about our Oldsmobile commercials in there and our ice cream sundae commercials in there. So you had to hurry up and write a 2-minute piece, little segment of music. Basically, it's a commercial. It's a commercial for yourself as an artist, is what a song is now, Mm-hmm. Then get all the way into the 80s and the 90s when MTV comes out. Now it's about visual. Well, oh boy, that changed it big time, didn't it? Visual? Now it matters what you're dressed like and what you look like. I mean, because in the 50s, TV came out, and that's why Elvis, I think, got so popular. Is here's this good-looking guy dressed really cool compared to not so good-looking guys who aren't worried about the way they're dressed, right? That's why he catapulted to the kids, like, oh, this guy's cool, right? He drives the car that looks like a rocket, But I think as we got the MTV era, now it was more about this visual. And boy, if you ever watch how MTV progresses through the 80s and 90s, the quick cuts, you're talking about like this fast-paced stuff. Have you seen these quick cuts? I don't even know what I'm looking at. Is that the guitar? No, it's the drum. No, it's the singer. The song's 3 minutes. The cuts are so fast. It's a blur of it. The one song is a showcase of the artist instead of a piece of vibey music. It's a showcase in case they only get that one song. Let's show you the band. Let's show you all the different outfits they're going to change into. Let's show you the different cuts. And let's hurry up and get to the hook, because we don't have time for you to tell a story. That changed music in general, which eventually led to Napster, of getting it for free, which eventually led to where we are now with streaming. And with streaming, everyone wants to be a star now. We got social media. Everyone's famous. They're not concerned about taking a picture with you as a hey, look, I got a picture with Sting. I got a picture with Sting. Now one with Justin Bieber. Now one with Paul Simon. Let me post all these. So let me see how many people hit the like button, because I'm now famous for having so many likes. And everything was about being famous which makes the art less valuable. Who cares about the artist? I just want a picture with that artist to show you that I met the artist, right? And that has led into this streaming thing where everyone wants to record at home, make a record, put it out, and nobody cares about anything anymore, which has devalued music. And it's a terrible thing, because I think all three of us that were just talking about, how we grew up playing music and learning music, the whole point was to learn the art of this thing. But what are the upcoming generations what are they trying to copy? The music or the plan?
Right.
Or the lifestyle.
Yeah, and I mean that became a thing in the I guess in the 50s that became a thing too. I mean, Elvis kind of changed that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying just Elvis himself, but the Elvis generation, right? The dress like this, drive these cars, smash a hotel room.
The worst thing, sorry about this, but I'm just thinking about MTV. Starts out, this changing, revolutionizing the way, music is shown or listened to. And now it's reality TV.
That's a whole nother conversation that we could have. But that whole thing is like, that is I'm not saying that we shouldn't have video footage or television or, but the way that we've done it and the way that we have spun this particular art form, I think music is the greatest art form of all time. I mean, I'm biased because that's what I play. But, being a chef is an artist, right? Being a painter is an artist. A construction worker can be an artist. I mean, it's all art. But music is the only art form that is not a tangible thing. So we talk about Picasso or Michelangelo. I could look at his painting and I can hold his painting. You can't hold my song. You can only remember it. And here's a great one. Like, you don't even have to listen to it. If I say Yesterday by the Beatles, isn't it in your head now? It's there. Do you need to hear it? You know it. It becomes part of who you are. Mm. And that to me makes it, what an amazing art form, right? I mean, I can mess with your emotions with a song, and they're taking this art form and just diluting it so much so everyone gets a little piece of the art form. There was a time when, I mean, is it better now or worse now? That's a debatable question. It's better now because everyone has access to making music and playing music and seeing music. And here I can turn on right now what's some random dude's doing in his bedroom in South Korea and listen to it right now. That never existed before, right? Maybe it's amazing. Maybe he's the next Babe Ruth of music, or maybe it's garbage. Mm-hmm. There was a time when you had to be signed to a label. You couldn't, if a Ricky Nelson or Elvis or Chuck Berry, the guys from the 50s, whatever, wanted their music heard, it had to be selected. They had to go into a recording studio and play it, record it, have it pushed. I mean, there's all kinds of flaws to that too. There's good things that we don't do it like that anymore because everyone was getting robbed, right? But we're still getting robbed because now if you want someone to hear your music, you have to get 1 million streams on Spotify. And you know what 1 million streams adds up to? A few $1,000. That has to be split between all the people. So if you walk away with $40 from a hit song,
wow,
that's insane. I mean, how do you continue to make music?
Where do you think that's going to go?
Well, I think, what the hell do I know? But I mean, I think this pandemic, as terrible as this thing was, or still is, right? Mm-hmm. I think this was a giant, sometimes you need a tragedy to look at yourself. I think this pandemic, what's the first thing that happened? Let's just look at the music issue with the pandemic. First thing that happened was everything closed, stopped. What was the next thing that happened with music? Everyone's on their computers grabbing a guitar and singing a song, or sitting at the piano and singing the song, right? We're not listening to these fully produced, auto-tuned things anymore. We're listening to a guy playing an instrument. You're good or you're not good, right? I think that was such a great thing for the industry, and I hope that carries through, because people got so heavily into production. I mean, open up Instagram and just go through 100 people's things and 100 young guys and tell me how many says producer. Half.
Yeah.
You know, everyone's a producer now. They produce music. They have a laptop. They take a beat that existed. They put it here. They put this here. Great. I got a song. I'm going to upload it and have 1 billion people listen to it. And I'm going to make $100. And that's got to go, man. I mean, that's got to go. I'm not saying it's bad. I love a lot of it, but that system has to go, because it's the system of, hey, I'm this great chef and I'm going to cook. And then a guy comes in and goes, hey, I could cook the same stuff as him. Not as good, but I'll do it for half the price. Well, if you hire that guy, your restaurant's going to fail. Well, why is that not happening with music? With music, we're just allowing it to be garbage because we all want to just make it rather than appreciate the value of who's better, who's practiced, who's worthy. It's gone out the door. So I think this pandemic has shook it up. So hopefully real artists with real music come through. And again, I'm not knocking any kind of electronic music in any way. Sometimes that's amazing. You know, I myself listen to that. But let's take who deserves to be there instead of just throwing everyone into this big pool where they all go, just put me out there for millions to hear and let's see what happens. Let's reevaluate what we're listening to. I saw a lot of people go on, huge stars that you pay $200 to go see, that go on and sat there with a piano and you're like, it's okay. They need the production. They need fireworks and dancers.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong with that. But I'm hoping people come out of this pandemic and like, how are we just going to go back into watching someone sit here and touch an instrument and play your song to now you're going to buy a ticket to me and I'm pantomiming with fireworks and 100 dancers on the stage? That's not what you're coming to see anymore. I hope. That's what I'm hoping happens. I hope that they want the organicness, which if we go back to an organic sense, that will definitely clear up the music industry again and kind of restart it. And maybe it's not so much about knocking out as many people as we can, putting stuff out, and just let's see who actually works on something quality and has a reason to do it, a story to do it, not just trying to get famous, you know?
I've got it's probably a newbie question, but I'm sure other people will probably have the same question at some point. You subscribe, I subscribe to Apple Music, so I can go in and I can pay for a single or for the album, or I can pay $14.95, or whatever it is for the year. How do you get paid for, like, if everybody is signing up for $14.95, how does that funnel down to you?
I mean, if you ask 50 people that, they're going to give you 50 answers. But the gist of it, first of all, Apple Music and iTunes is certainly the best way for an artist to make their money. So, I hope that anyone out there listening to this or whatever, like, if you download it for free, you're saving yourself $1, right? Maybe, or whatever it is for the song, 69 cents, $1.29, whatever they sell for. Mm-hmm. You're saving yourself $1, and you're appreciating this music, and you want more of that music, right? But you're by downloading it for free, you're not enabling the artist to make you more of that music. So I pray that everyone out there spends a little bit of money, but even through, so like, iTunes selling the song for, let's say, $1. Even that $1, 30 cents goes to iTunes, 25% goes to the distributor. Who knows how many people are involved in production? The song makes 40 cents on the dollar, and then that's divided up between however many people. So the artist might get a quarter, maybe, if they're smart and they wrote their own song, right?
Wow.
With Apple Music, because you're signing up to a subscription, it's funneling all that stuff, kind of like what BMI or ASCAP, they're the two big publishing houses, right? Every restaurant in the world has to pay BMI and ASCAP for using music. If they're pumping music into their house or into a casino or into a grocery store, they're paying songwriting royalties. How do we know what Albertsons on 4th and Main is playing in Timbuktu? No, they guess. They guess because of what's popular and what's going on. So it's a tricky scenario. So Apple Music, you're paying $15, but it's not really dividing it up between the artist equally, but at least the artist is still being able to make money, something, pennies, but something, right? So those are the two best ways to do it. But really for an artist, I mean, and what I've learned from me personally, and I can do this because I have gained enough followers, a fan base, or people that are interested in music that I can do this. I wouldn't recommend this to a young kid because if they say, hey, sell it for $1, if I don't know who you are, I'll never see it, right? But the best thing I've done is I put it up on iTunes and I sell the music and try to make the money back so it pays off the cost of making the music, paying my musicians, paying the mixers, the, you know, mastering. And then I allow it to everything else. Then I put it on Apple Music, Spotify, and Pandora. You want Alexa to know your music. You want it, you know, Amazon and Google. But the trick is first selling it to the people who want to buy it and then giving it away for free to all the people who are going to stumble into it down the road, you know. So now when I release a song, it goes up on iTunes for 2 weeks and then it releases. So if you want to wait 2 weeks to buy it, you can. But if you're a fan or someone who likes music, who wants to wait for the new song, you know? I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, no, you did. I've always wondered, you know, how that worked. And, you know, if there was an algorithm that kind of figured out, okay, this is popular, this is, you know, a bit popular, and then they filter out, they come up with some sort of formula.
That's exactly right. But I mean, but on all kinds of different deep levels that it's hard to really understand. And it changes monthly too. Algorithms change monthly, you know?
Right.
It's interesting. It's an interesting thing. It makes no sense. I mean, I was only making, you know, the physical copies so we could sell them at shows and stuff like that. But who even has a CD player now?
Who has?
I don't own a CD player in my house.
Oh, right. Yeah.
They don't even put them in computers. You have to buy, you know, I got to buy this separate machine that you plug the CD that looks like it's from 1976 that you plug the CD into, and then you plug that in just to be able to play a CD. And that's crazy. So I've even switched. The music industry changes every 6 months. And it's one thing to be an artist or a musician. It's another thing to know the marketplace and how to get your music heard. And they're two completely different jobs, you know? And that's why I recommend, you know, if you don't know it or want to do that, you know, social media, you have to stay hip on social media and stuff like that. If you don't know that stuff, you've got to find someone who does and work with them, because otherwise just no one will ever hear your music, ever. And, you know, then you're just making vanity records, and you're just making records for yourself. But once I started charting on the Billboard charts and stuff like that, it changed my whole perception of how to make music. Like, not in a sellout way of changing my music. It made me think, oh, I need to really promote the music if I want people to buy it. And I don't want to be on a label, because that's ridiculous these days, giving a label half of everything you do, half of every t-shirt you sell. No thanks, you know? There's already no money. So I don't want to be on a label. Also, a label tells you what to record, who to record with, when to record it, when you need to buy it. I sit in this very room here every day and I write music, and I write a song every day, and I record it and I release what I want to release. And also knowing what the people who are interested in my music are expecting of me. So I make sure I give them what they want to hear, but I don't sell myself short for that, right?
I guess with social media, the way it's set up right now, and you're putting out songs, you get instant feedback, and you get to hear exactly, you know, what your fans are looking for. That is completely different than, you know, 10, 15, 20 years ago. That, I guess, changes everything too, doesn't it?
It changes everything in a massive way, in a very massive way, because now you need to become this. There was a time, Michael Jackson and all those people, it was interesting not to know a lot about them. They were mysterious. But now you need to know that I just ate a hamburger. Did I put cheese on it or not? Right. You need to know that, because you become a friend with me through this box, and you know about the people. You can Google anything about me. You can, hey, he said this. He said he was #1 on this Billboard chart. You can Google that and find out if that's true or not. So there was a time, I mean, like guys, the old rock and roll guys would lie about their ages, and you can't do that anymore.
Right.
They would say, oh yeah, this song was number 1. Well, now you can search it and realize, no, that was not number 1. That was number 14. Yes, it's popular, but it wasn't the number 1 song. You can find out anything right now. So it makes it very difficult to lie or to smoke and mirror, which is kind of what this business is built on, isn't it? I mean, not the music itself, but the selling of the music.
Yeah. But what about the other side of social media where you've just haters? Yeah, I don't know what you want to call them, trolls, some people call them, but they can really mess you up.
Well, I mean, that goes back to just the whole sense of business, even with old black and white newspapers in the 1940s with Sinatra. You cannot read what anybody thinks of your music. You cannot. I used to do that. I remember the very first number 1 song I had. I did a cover of Eleanor Rigby by the Beatles with this classical violinist named Joshua Bell. I was playing in bars and stuff like that. I meet this classical violinist, and he says, hey, I'm doing this record with all my friends. It's with Paul McCartney, Sting, Josh Groban, Chris Bodie. I mean, everybody, right? Alison Krauss. I'm like, why am I on this? He goes, I think you're awesome, and I want to put you on this record. Let's do it. Let's do it. So I wrote a song for it. I was all excited. And then they go, hey, Paul McCartney has to postpone 6 months, and we can't wait for Paul McCartney. This was through Sony Records. This was my first real big break into the industry, right? And Joshua Bell says, well, we're going to not wait for him. We're just going to go ahead and release the record anyway, because we want it to be up in time for Grammy nominations. And that blew my whole mind, like the marketing sense, like, oh, yeah, I guess getting a Grammy is bigger than doing something cool with someone you want. Like, whatever, right? Whatever your thoughts are. So my first thought was, well, shoots, if Paul McCartney's not going to do this anymore, you have all these big names. No one knows who I am. And if I sing an original song on there, what's that going to do? Nothing. I'll be the last singer. Or since Paul McCartney's not on it, let's do a Beatles song. Let's do Eleanor Rigby because it's interesting and we can make it trippy. And we did that, and it became a number 1 single off of the album and the one that was downloaded the most and all that stuff, right? Sting is on this record. And here's this unknown guy who's got this number 1 single. Blown away, changed my whole idea of the industry. What's the first thing I do? I open Google or whatever and start reading the reviews. First time I ever had reviews. Like I used to put out records and we sell 1,000 or 2,000 copies over a year. This thing all of a sudden just boom, 50,000 copies, and I'm reading 100,000 reviews, just scrolling. And it's like, this is amazing, blah, 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 blah. Everything was very positive. It was great.
Yeah.
The only one I can tell you that I remember is one guy said, this guy sounds like he's eating a sandwich when he sings the song. And I'm like, what does that even mean? That's all I can tell you I remember, this hit song. Hit song, and all I know is some guy hated it and thought my voice sounded bad. So the lesson is never, ever read what people think about your music. You have to just do it and go with the gut feeling. If people are buying it, it's working, be artistic. Just keep going. I mean, there's feedback, but social media I wouldn't call feedback because everyone's a tough guy behind a computer screen. You know what I mean?
Oh, man.
I say you don't read it. You just make music and you just
post and ghost.
Right. Just let it be. Let it be its own entity. And if you make fun of the song or you hate the song, I mean, let me hear yours. And then let me post something about yours. I mean, then we're all going to be evil people to each other, right?
We had this really cool entrepreneur on the podcast, Andrea Lake. She was part of Apprentice at one point. And I didn't know this, but when they're doing these reality shows, they have these psychiatrists or psychologists that work with the participants, making sure that they don't handle or they do handle their social media properly. And, some people can go into a deep depression, I guess, or, just depending on your personality. But I couldn't believe that they had staff that handle social media for their people starring in the reality show.
Yeah. So when I started doing all the big headlining here in Vegas and stuff like that, I had that where I wasn't doing my own social media. They would do it. They would ask me the way I like my lingo to go. they would look at my previous text like, yo, what's up, everybody? And they would write it like that, you know? And then I started realizing, well, this is great because now I don't have to focus on social media. But then I also realized I'm losing my actual connection with fans, because that's what it is now, is a connection with fans. It's not so much music anymore. It's your connection with people and your story and what makes them want to listen to you. Because now there's 1 billion people trying to be rock stars, not 6, you know? And you pick your favorite. Now it's not that. It's now what's this person trying to get at? And how does that coincide with my life? It's interesting because there's no real answer. Or social media is amazing platform, but it's also the devil. So, I mean, it's, you know, I don't know where I stand on any of that stuff, because, like, of course I do it, and we have a lot of followers on there, and that's how I market my music. So it's good for me, but I funnel mine out. If I ever get a negative comment, I instantly block the person. You know, I've decided in my life I don't want that. I don't care if they say, hey, I wish you wouldn't put a guitar solo, and you know, block.
Yeah. I'm also interested, like you talked about earlier, about just it came easy for you, you know, to learn music. What about to perform?
It came very easy. You know, I mean, all those things came easy. I never had a problem being in front of people. I did Star Search, the show. Remember that show? That was like American Idol of the day with that big band. I did that when I was 10 years old. And I had butterflies, of course, for that. I was nervous. And I went out, and it just killed anything that came after that. You know, here I'm 10 years old on national TV. Anything after that was easy. Being in front of people, I never had a problem with that. So everything in music was very easy for me, thank God. And you know, just I'm not saying that I don't practice. I work very, very, very hard, like, to constantly improve myself. I feel like I don't know anything. You know, the hard parts were getting people to hear my music. That was the struggle. That's a constant struggle, and makes you know, that's what makes most people quit.
So I guess it's fairly similar to an entrepreneur. It's resilience, right? Just pursuing. And
I mean, it's consistency, it's persistency, it's believing in your stuff. It's caring what people think because you want them to have it, but it's also not caring what they think to make you stop doing it. I mean, I've had the door shut. I mean, because I'm one of the very unique scenarios of not being signed to a label. We've had lots of charting success and album sales without a label, without PR, without radio play, without any of that stuff, because I just don't play the game. And that doesn't usually work out successful for people. You have to play the game, you know, and you have to be on the radio, and you have to do all these things. And that was a struggle my whole life, being told, like, well, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this. And being young and believing them, you know, like going, oh, maybe I shouldn't do that. It wasn't until we started getting like this underground following. We were playing clubs all over the West Coast and getting this following of people who liked the eclecticness of what I was doing. And then I said, you know what, I'm going to be eclectic. I mean, my whole life, my old mixtapes, you know, you make mixtapes, transfer all your albums, your vinyl to a cassette to save them, right? Would be a Mozart sonata, then Prince, and then Elvis, and then, you know, Ray Charles, and then MC Hammer. Like, everyone would listen to my stuff and go, what the hell are you listening to? I'm like, I like it all. This is great music. Like, everything has its moment, right? I thought, like, wouldn't it be awesome to be that artist, to have, like, if you're making an Italian dinner and you want to put on some background music for that, I got it. You go to Frankie Moreno's Italian music background dinner stuff. Or if you're on a treadmill, what's Frankie Moreno's exercise music? I mean, you know, I'm obviously being somewhat humorous about that, but really I wanted stuff that fit every vibe, where you didn't have to search what artist makes this kind of music. Like, I just wanted to make music. And that was my biggest hurdle. That was a depressing hurdle, you know, or doing things and then getting smacked down by every record label over and over and over. I got turned down by every label in Nashville, and they all said the same thing. They said, you're too Vegas. And I've never even been to Vegas. I don't even know what that meant. And I thought, oh, well, maybe because I'm Italian and I don't wear a cowboy hat and I play a piano and my music sounds slick, I guess. Retro, whatever that means. I moved, so I figured, well, I'm going to move to Vegas. And they're like, oh, that's the worst thing. That's where entertainers go to die. And I moved here when I was just in my early 20s and came out here playing original music, which nobody does, and instantly became the first act ever in Vegas to headline a room that's not a celebrity, that's playing music that I wrote. You know, I mean, obviously bringing Bobby Darin's or Frank Sinatra's, they're playing their original music, but they were celebrities. I wasn't.
Yeah.
So we were the first ones to do that, and it opened up the door. Whoever wants to do that now. And all the bands started thinking about it, but no one was really willing to take. Everyone throws in an original in their set, but they're too scared to do it. I'm like, what? You got to jump in the water. You know, I mean, they're afraid to have someone tell them that sucks. And I mean, if I told you how many times someone told me my stuff sucks, where it crushed me, but all it did was make me work harder. But then I learned the ultimate lesson. Like, where are all the people that were telling me I sucked? You know, the current band people, what are they doing now? As I'm churning out hits, what are they doing? I can't even find them online. So it makes you realize, like, stop listening to people. You know, just stop listening to what people's opinions are, because don't take financial advice from someone who has more money than you, right?
There you go.
If Paul McCartney wants to tell me what I should do with my music, I'm all ears.
Right.
But if the other guy who's trying to do the same thing I'm doing tells me, well, that's his thing. And the same thing goes, I was just talking to a friend of mine, a co-writer that I work with all the time. We were talking about, like, God, I watch all these things of people telling you how to become famous online. It drives me nuts. Who are these people? Who has time to talk about that? If you're actually doing it, who has time to talk about it? And make these courses online of just constantly helping other people get famous. And I listen to it, I'm going, like, I would go on and teach this course of how, you know, but my course wouldn't work for you. Everyone has once someone does it, that's it. You have to do it a different way. In music, it's art. We can't start painting Picassos now. You can't start putting the eyeballs up here. It's been done. You can say, oh, Picasso did it like this. That's how we should do it. No. Now you're just going to go, you're like Picasso. And no one told Picasso he was like anyone else. And so it defeats the whole purpose. You have to make your art, you have to make your music, whatever makes you happy, and you have to find the people. And that's why social media is good. It weeds out who also thinks your music is good. And accumulate these people. Who agrees with the art together. And then you get into this weird thing and you expand that. That's the only way to have true success currently. And I'm not saying 6 months ago or 6 months from now, but right now, it's finding who likes what you have and building those people, having those people show it to other people. Kind of like an underground band would do, traveling around in a van. I mean, that's kind of where we're at right now. But the van is Facebook and Instagram, you know?
Thanks for listening, guys and gals. That concludes part 1 of our interview with Frankie Moreno. Make sure to tune in later in the week to hear the rest of the episode. As always, make sure to like and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Helps keep you up to date with all things I Know This Guy and helps us grow the show. That's enough for me, and I'll see you next time.